Alright, so here we have our fun green Timmy commander, Sasaya, Orochi Ascendant, whose ability is really only relevant when it flips, which says, whenever a land you control is tapped for mana, add 1 mana of that type to your mana pool for each other land you control with the same name. So if you have 5 forests out and you tap 1 forest, it's going to add mana equal to the number of other forests you control. So in this case, it's going to add 4 mana for each forest that you tap if you had 5 out. So as you can imagine, it gets out of control extremely fast and results in a lot of large green creatures and lots of fun shenanigans. In order to activate, you need to reveal 7 land cards from your hand, and it will become a legendary enchantment rather than being a creature, so it will not be able to block after. Something you should be aware of. The deck itself is pretty straightforward on lands. I'm only running 37 with Rogue's Passage and Reliquary Tower being the 2 primary non-basic lands. There's other ones you could do, but those are really the most important lands to have. Obviously getting rid of your max hand size, and then also being able to make either your large green creatures unblockable or just use Rogue's Passage politically to mess with your opponents when they're attacking and try and keep yourself from being the #1 target. The deck itself is rarely targeted because it's extremely low threat through the majority of the game until it explodes. So Storm Cauldron, one of the best, most important cards in the deck, sets your opponents back a significant amount because whenever they're tapping lands for mana, they have to return those lands to their hand. It does allow each player to play an additional land, but for you, whenever you tap a land for mana, once Sasaya is online, you're going to be getting a significant amount of mana for each land tapped, whereas your opponents are going to be getting 1 mana each time a land is tapped. So this is going to give you a huge advantage compared to your opponent right off the bat. Next we have Praetor's Council, pretty straightforward card. It makes it so you don't have a maximum hand size for the rest of the game, and it brings everything back from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty solid card in the deck. Squall is in as an alternate win condition, as well as the ability to, wipe the board of flyers. Creeping Renaissance can bring back a bunch of lands. You probably are going to find yourself pitching lands or other card types early in the game as you're trying to build up your max hand size, but also keep large creatures or other things over lands, since you're not always going to be able to bring Sasaya online right away. Wildest Dreams is a solid card in this deck. It acts kind of as a mana sink. It's going to be similar to Praetor's Council for you, with the exception that it doesn't give you the increased max hand size. Venser's Journal is really just another card to increase your max hand size, and the life gain for each card in your hand is nice. It definitely increases your sustainability. I think, the life gain is probably not enough to justify running it, and it may be better off just using Spellbook instead. I haven't tested Spellbook, and I haven't actually resolved the Venser's Journal to see if it's worth having in the deck. Zendikar Resurgent is good. One of the biggest benefits of it is obviously the mana doubling. Since you're not going to be casting a ton of creature spells, it does allow you to have a strong board presence if you didn't manage to bring Sasaya online, since you're going to be dropping lands every single turn, most likely, and ramping as well. So the deck is presented with an alternate win condition, which is just traditional ramp and then playing big green creatures. Animus Awakening, pretty straightforward. It's a mana sink, and it allows you to get more lands into play, which once Sasaya is online, results in, insane amounts of mana production. Gaia's Touch is a nice card. It is counterproductive to the Sasaya strategy, but at a certain point you're going to have to decide, are you going to be able to get Sasaya online this game, or are you going to have to just do regular ramp. So this is going to obviously allow you to do that regular ramp strategy and do it extremely well. Fastwood Hydra, since a lot of times people are going to be killing your bombs, this one redistributes the +1/+1 counters when it dies across your creatures. So it's useful to have in the deck. Colossus is really just a beefy boy, becomes a 20/20 indestructible with trample if you have enough mana, which you will. So are there better cards? Yeah, there's a million better cards. I mean, look, most of the Eldrazi are better. This deck is designed to be, you know, more of a fun Timmy deck. It's probably one of the most casual decks I have, and is really here to try and give me decks I can play in a more casual playgroup setting. Solo Zendikar, it's a mana sink. It's fine, but I don't know. I don't think it's, you know, it's not the best card. I would always want to take Eldrazi or just other things over this. The token production is certainly nice. You could easily run other token producers, which I also have in here. So, you know, it's fine. Nothing amazing. The reach is nice, but, you know, you don't run it just because it has reach. Ant Queen is a fantastic card to have in the deck. This one, you know, is a cheaper mana sink. It doesn't make 3/3s, but the reality is, you know, it makes chump blockers for days, so it's pretty solid. If you're gonna have Soul in here, you might as well have Ant Queen. Then we have Wolfbriar Elemental. Again, pretty solid choice. Multi-kicker is always nice. He's a little bit different because he puts them in when he enters rather than having to activate after he enters. It shouldn't be a huge difference. Very rarely would that be relevant, but, you know, it's still there. Terastodon, you know, again, sometimes you have to hit non-creature permanents, and he's one of the best ways to do it. Hero's Bane is nice because it doubles its power with 4 mana. So this one gets out of hand pretty quickly. Hydra Brewmaster is a, you know, token producer in addition to being a pretty large creature. So, you know, it has a pretty solid place in the deck. I really went with Hydras, mostly because they cost X and just because they're a more fun, casual theme. There is a new Hydra that came out recently in, I want to say, either 2020 or Horizons. I do have to look into that and see if it's worth putting in here. I'm guessing it probably is. Wormcalling is one of the best cards in the deck. The buyback for it allows you to play it both early game for chump blocking and then late game for finishers. It's a really solid card. 100% recommend having it in the deck. Mistcutter Hydra, you know, it can't be countered. It's got haste and protection from blue. It's a really good card in the deck. When you combine it with Rogue's Passage, it allows you to, you know, one-hit kill somebody. So there's really not much to dislike about that card. Silklash Spider is X to creatures with flying on a stick. It's a 2/7 body with reach. It's a good card. EDH, you know, you're going to have a lot of flyers, so that card ends up being pretty strong. Gelatinous Genesis is one of the weaker cards in the deck. It's not a bad card. It just has so little early game value. I'd almost always rather have the Wormcalling because of the buyback. Yes, Wormcalling will put fewer bodies into play for the mana you spend up until a certain point, and depending on the size of it. Sorry, I was yawning. Yeah, so Gelatinous Genesis, it's fine. It just isn't spectacular. There's nothing about it that really stands out in my mind. I don't have Sasaya. I'm sorry, I don't have Yeva, Nature's Herald, in the deck. I would cut Gelatinous Genesis for Yeva because it gives green creatures flash, which is really important because you drop a giant creature and yeah, your opponents are going to want to kill that before your turn comes back around, and allows you to beat their face in with it. So Yeva is probably an auto include in this deck. Garruk Wildspeaker, pretty straightforward. You know, he untaps lands, and the untapped land effect is really important in this deck for obvious reasons. Once Sasaya is out, he creates blockers, so he protects himself. And the overrun effect, the trample, is really solid to have. Another card that's worth putting in the deck is actually... nope, lost my train of thought on that one. I'll come back to that. Here we have Early Harvest. Target player untaps all the basic lands he or she controls. Great card. Corrosion Restore, it's untapped land effect. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. No reason not to play it in the deck. Rude Awakening, you know, untap all your lands. You could animate them, I guess, but really you're going to be just using it to untap lands. Magus of the Candelabra, auto-include in the deck. Yisan, that's who I was thinking of, Yisan. So you could do Yisan, I think it's Yisan Wanderer Bard or something like that. It's not bad because a lot of the creatures in your deck are CMC 2 or 3 because they're Hydras. So the X doesn't, you know, count towards it when you're searching. So Yisan can actually get you a pretty nice chain of cards. You could go like Magus of the Candelabra into, or Mistcutter Hydra into, any number of Hydras. So he gives you a pretty nice tutor chain that could help you, establish your board presence a little bit earlier than you might have originally. Next we have Patron of the Orochi. It's not, it's not an auto-include in the deck per se. I happen to have it. It's also, I think it's like $10 or something. So I probably would just end up selling this thing rather than playing with it in the deck since it's a casual deck. But tap it, untap all forests and all green creatures. So it's a good card. Magus of the Library. It's additional card draw for you. It's fine. I've mostly been using it just for ramp rather than the card draw because I struggle to maintain 7 cards in my hand. You might be able to use him, but I'm not sure if he was really that strong. Seer Sundial, card I would consider cutting. The mana investment, the return on investment is just too minimal. 4 mana, and then you're going to have to pay 2 every single time to draw a card. Temple Bell, pretty straightforward. You want to try and keep your hand full and get as many lands as you can. Howling Mine, same idea. Horn of Greed is a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's going to benefit your opponents more than you. You just kind of need to understand what they're playing and consider whether or not you should be putting that card out. Rowan is fine. If you drew a land, you can reveal it and then draw on another card for the turn if you drew a basic land. So it helps keep your hand full, and it does help prevent dead draws later on in the game. Boundless Realms is a fantastic card. Once you have Sasaya online, if you resolve this, you're going to be tapping for hundreds of mana. So pretty awesome. Each land won't tap for hundreds of mana, but a few lands tapped will tap for around 100 mana. So pretty awesome card. Sprouting Vines is probably the best tutor in the deck for lands since it has Storm. So you can end up, if you sequence everything correctly, if your opponents have played a couple spells, you might be able to use this to fill your hand all the way to 7 in one shot. So really solid card. Evolution Charm, it's nice, right? I mean, you search your library for a basic, put it into your hand, pretty straightforward. The fact that you can bring a creature back from the graveyard is important since I'm not running Regrowth in this deck. You should. It's always good to run Regrowth in a green deck or Eternal Witness. They're just in other decks. So, and then of course, being able to give something flying is nice. Give that Hydra flying to, get there. Not a bad option. Seek the Horizon, great card. Search for 3 basic lands, put them into your hand. Silver Ranger, Chump Blocker, searches for a basic, puts it into your hand. Crozen Tusker, he's kind of more just like a classic card. Yeah, he'll search for a forest. He's not the best, but, the deck is tuned a little bit down, so he's fine in here. Technically, I guess, the cycle is harder to counter, so sure, there could be some scenario where it gets you that 7th land uncounterable, so might as well play him. Civic Wayfinder. He's fine. If he wasn't signed in foil, I probably would look for something better than him. I'm sure there is. But he's foil and signed, so keeping him in. Borderland Explorer, again, not great because it lets your opponents also use his ability. But he's in there. Borderland Ranger, pretty straightforward. Chump blocker and searches for land. Chump blocker, searches for land. You can sack it to search for 2 lands, 2 basics. I keep saying land, but it's basic. But you read the card when you actually go to play it. Armillary Sphere, same deal. 1 card that gets you 2. You know, ideally, anything that is searching for lands in the deck would be getting at least 2 lands instead of 1. A 1-for-1 trade isn't creating that much value for you, especially in a deck where you care about having 7 lands in your hand. Horizon Spellbomb, you know, it's an egg, more or less, not quite. Ignore that. Still, it works pretty well. Journeyer's Kite, definitely playing the long game when you're playing this card. I think it's too slow, honestly, but you know, I haven't really gotten to test it yet. I've had it out a few times and I've used it to search for lands. But at that point, I was just playing the lands. This is one of your best land tutors in the deck, in addition to Sprouting Vines. So you can pitch your entire hand and just turn it into basic lands, basically. Really powerful card to have. Realm Seekers makes a big body, which can, you know, potentially kill people, and you can pay 3 to search for a land, put it into your hand. The fact that it searches for a land rather than a basic means you can go get your Reliquary Tower or your Rogue's Passage, so good card to have. Yav Elder, you know, he's pretty well known at this point. You know, searches for lands and draws you cards. And he blocks. Newest card I found laying in a bulk pile and realized I probably should look at the last couple sets and see if there's anything good in them. I don't have any Nisses in here. There might be a good one to have, so I also need to follow up and see if there is one. But you know, 1 card that searches for 2 basic forests and could potentially search for 3 instead. Journey of Discovery, you're mostly going to be using it for its first mode, which is to search for 2 basics, reveal and put them into your hand. But you could also entwine it if you want to, or you know, just play 2 additional lands. Guy's Bounty, you know, again, 1 card for 2 lands. This is fine. It basically replaces your draw with a basic land, so it's fine. But it can be a dead card. A lot of times can end up being a dead card late game. Kodama's Reach, you know, it puts 1 into your hand, so it's fine. You know, advancing your board state while advancing your primary strategy is typically good, which is why you'd also want to play Cultivate and of course Peregrination. You know, same ideas with all 3 of those cards. Swiftfoot Boots, you want to protect Sasaya. I don't run Lightning Grease in here again because they're in decks where it matters more. And once Sasaya flips, it becomes an enchantment anyway. The boots are pretty good to have on your, you know, your big stompy boys. Crows Grip, I honestly don't even know if it's worth having in here. There's not enough artifact or enchantment removal in this deck overall, nor tutor effects for it to be reliable in the event that something is hosing your deck. So sitting there and say draw go until you top deck a Crows Grip isn't a great strategy. Creeping Corrosion, you know, same kind of idea as the Crows Grip. In a multiplayer match especially, if someone's got an artifact or enchantment out that's really messing up the board, they're probably going to get taken care of by other players. So it may be better just to swap those cards out for things that advance your strategy more. So we'll see. I don't know. I haven't tested it enough to really know if that's the case. So I haven't tested it in situations where people are hosing the board with artifacts or enchantments that needed to be destroyed that didn't get taken care of. So I think it's pretty safe to assume you can let somebody else do that. So diffusion of responsibility in action. Constant Miss, straightforward card. You need it. I'm not running Glacial Chasm in this deck. You probably could run and probably should run Glacial Chasm in this deck. So wow, I keep yawning. Super annoying. You know, again, creatures don't deal combat damage this turn. Not much to dislike about this card, since all you have to do is sacrifice a land to buy it back. And that's also where, you know, your Creeping Renaissance, Praetor's Council, and the Wildest Dreams all come into play, because you may have to get rid of some lands at some point over the course of the game, and this helps you sustain that strategy. So again, so cards that I would consider adding to the deck, Yisan and Yeva, I think are both that should be in the deck that aren't currently in the deck, as well as just keeping an eye out for cards in the most recent sets that would synergize well with this deck. Any of the Nissas are probably worth looking at, not saying worth adding since I haven't read what they do, but you know, keep them in mind. So it's a fun deck. It's a casual deck, very casual. You know, you basically are, it's kind of like a bad Exodia deck from Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you're going to be sitting there and praying that you just top deck all the right pieces, and that nobody touches you while you do it. Nobody attacks you when you do it, until you can get your pieces together and win the game. So hopefully you can go smash some faces with some big green stompies, and good luck. Hope you like the deck.